give the floor to our four, or in fact it's one and then a duo, and the other one to our speakers, who have prepared a beautiful also visuals that you can look at. And after each of their presentations, either Simone or I will ask them some questions. They all have a microphone, so if they wish to ask the other ones questions in between, please do. And at the end, there is room for you as an audience to also think about what you've heard. If you have any issues that you think, oh, but this is really interesting, but what does it mean, or how do you do that, or how do you combine that, or why did you make a choice like that? So also when we are in this, so the first part of the evening, when you hear something, write it down or memorize it, that the moment that your turn is on, that you have great questions and that we can exchange about that. So I already said It's All Graphic is organized by the Wim Carel Institute. It's an institute that came about in 2013. It was a sort of follow-up of the NAGO. The NAGO is the Netherlands. It was a sort of Nederlands Archieven Grafisch Ontwerpen. But at that time, it was also a little bit like now, that lots of subsidies were being suspended or taken away. And then when the NAGO stopped, there were a couple of people who thought, yeah, but we have such beautiful material, we have so much knowledge. Let's go on, and maybe we can't take care of all these archives, but what we can do is address what graphic design can be. And what it wants to be is look at history. So it's about heritage, it's about archives. But what is even more important is, what does it mean now? How can we look at that from the context from now, from social issues, from issues that are all around us, and not just as a sort of very specific professional way of looking, but we are all enclosed, or we are all completely into graphic design because we are looking at things, and it's part of a daily environment. So, and what I like now about this hall is that there's many students, because that's the future, because that's what we want, from the history to the now to the future. And there's many ways that we do that. One of them is that the Wim Carel Institute installed it was installed by special appointment a professor, that's Alice Twemlow, who's sitting here. Alice works at the UvA and has lots of students who dive into, I don't know, women in design, interbellum design. What I really like about Alice's approach is that it's very much a sort of critical looking for the urgency of now again. Even if you look at graphic design of the interbellum, it's not just about the interbellum, but how does that relate to the now? Then there's two fellows, that's Richard Nisse and Kilian Berg, and I saw Richard, but I don't know Kilian even, so I don't know if he's there. He's not. Yeah, Richard is over there. So they're also linked to the UvA, to the University of Amsterdam, and they have students, they do their projects, they do workshops, they do something the day after tomorrow, on Wednesday, but I already understood it's full, you can't get in anymore. I also can't get in anymore, but anyhow, that's what it is. They're so successful. These fellows, so they do research, they do practice-based projects, and it's quite new. For them, it's quite new, so it also needs to get started. Then, once a year, we organize the Wim Carel lecture at the Stedelijk Museum. We just did that in November with Amal Alhaag and Lies Ross. And then last year, we did that with Marianne Duff. That was also in November 2023. Marianne is the director of OSCAM, and it's an institute or a museum in the Bijlmer that looks very much into black culture, hip-hop, and how that, of course, her lecture was how that links to graphic design. And then the last one is that twice a year we do It's All Graphic, what we're doing now, together with our partner Pakhuis de Zwijger, who are complete how to say, they are geniuses in how they organize that, so we're very grateful to that and to them. And so today is our first one of the year. As said, I do this together with Simone Trum.
Without a
no
P. Very important to say that,
it's
especially today.
Blue Monday today, but Simone is a co-founder of Team Thursday together with Loes van Esch. Loes is also here. Yeah, here's Loes. And Simone is a designer, but also I understood that Simone and Loes and a couple of friends, they have bought a beautiful church. I don't know if I can tell them.
Yeah.
In Rotterdam, a beautiful church by JJP Oud.
The architect.
And they're going to organize stuff. They're going to do their studio there, so it's great. The idea is that I start off introducing Sara. Then Sara, you do your presentation here, so we'll take our stuff away. And then after that, Simone is going to question you, and then we alternate. But maybe I can shortly introduce you. To your left is Sara de Bondt. Sara is a graphic designer. I know Sara, amongst other things, for the visual identity of wheels in Brussels, but also of many things that you did in London. Some of the examples I should, because you still do a lot in London. Maybe I shouldn't even tell about it because it will come in the question round and also in what you do yourself. But you have a strong link to London. And in 2008, Sara started with Occasional Papers together with her partner Antony Hudek. I never know how to pronounce it. I know Antony from the London Museum near to Liverpool Street Station. Raven Row. That's a long time ago, eh? Yeah, Raven Row. And Sara will do a presentation of about 10 minutes, and after that we'll do the questions, and then we go on with the other ones. Thank you.
Hello, hi. Nice to meet you. I got a bit confused by the setup. So there are videos of our books on the side, and then there should be a talk behind me.
Maybe the light a little bit down.
Is there the presentation? Is it coming? Yes. So I've got way too many slides to tell you a little bit about me, about my practice, and about the publishing house. So for starters, I'm a graphic designer. I studied in Brussels in the late 90s. I was trained mostly by artists and illustrators. And after I graduated, I went straight away to the Jan van Eyck Academy, which you will be familiar with. But I was a very young student participant there, very impressionable. And it sort of formed me. And when I was there, I met a lot of international designers and decided to move to London, where I got a job working for these guys, Foundation 33. It was actually through a friend of mine who knew them. I won't go into the details. But why I put it in there, I moved there in 2002, and with one suitcase, thinking, why not? It'd be nice to work in London for a year. And I moved back to Belgium 13 years later with a whole truck full of stuff. But and I ended up working for Dan and Sam, Daniel Etok and Sam Solhog for 1 year. And they did things like this, which is a Big Brother identity. It's a giant corporate campaign at the same time as this, which is outside our studio. One day they were digging a hole in the ground, and Dan printed off a word that said treasure, and it was dug into the ground. And those two things were seen as equally important, doing big corporate jobs, but also doing your own stuff. And that had the same kind of level of urgency, and I really learned a lot from that. So after a year, I was a little bit sick of working for a boss. We were only ever allowed to use Accidents Grotesque. And I met someone called James Goggin, who's another graphic designer, and he said, "Oh, I'm looking for a studio. Why don't we share a studio? And I can pass on some work." So that's what we did. So that's in 2003 or 4. I set up my own studio, and this is one of the first things I designed in 2008 for Wheels. Is an art center in Brussels, and I put that in there because of this, which is the fact that history has always been really important in my work. It's why it's such an honor to be invited by the Wim Krauwel Institute. When I was studying back in the 90s in Brussels, I didn't get taught any graphic design history whatsoever. So when I moved to London and I was hanging out with all my friends, people like Richard Hollis, Robin Kinross, all these amazing designers, they really knew their history. And even walking down the street in London, I felt impressed by this sort of presence of graphic design history. So I've been using my practice as a way to try to learn about graphic design history. So for example, Wheels, I was looking at a work of Marcel Brotaars, who is an artist in Brussels, who was calling for a museum of fine art and used his work as inspiration to do the signage. Or this is another example. I did an identity for an interior design fair, and they told me I could do whatever I want as long as I use this logo. And the logo was designed in the 60s by a Belgian designer called Boudewijn de Lare, who I had never heard of. And I thought, usually what you do as a graphic designer is you take the logo that you have to use and you put it somewhere really small, and then you make a really cool design, a poster yourself. And I thought, I really loved what he did, why don't I go meet him? And I spent the afternoon in his studio looking at his work, and I got so inspired that I asked him if he could make his logo into a typeface, and then developed his ideas around color into the whole identity. But what's really nice is that then after me, there was another designer who continued using the typeface. And I love that idea that graphic design is working together, that we are like part of a pool of people and not trying to kill each other, but trying to kind of, support each other or something. And something similar happened with Art Brussels. They asked me to do their identity. It was based on the site of Expo 58, which is like where the Atomium is in Brussels. And I thought, oh, cool. I will base it on the identity of Expo 58. I digitize the typeface, blah, blah, blah. And only I forgot to do one thing. I forgot to ask permission. And the identity was all over Brussels when we got a letter from the grandson of Lucien de Rook, who designed the identity in the 50s, and with a cease or desist. So I had to pay all my fee for the identity to Lucien, which is right. I should have asked permission, and I really learned also a lot from that. In 2008, I met my partner, Antony. It's called Hudek, Antony Hudek, and he's an art historian. And we fell in love, and we thought, what can we do together? I'm a graphic designer, and he's an art historian, and we both felt that there weren't enough books being made about people who are not so good at promoting themselves, people who are different, people who are weird, people who don't fit into the molds. And we also really wanted our books to be affordable so that people who don't have big budgets can buy them. And that's what we started doing. So since then, we've published about 42 books together. And this is the very first one we made. Antony and I were thinking of starting a publishing company, and my friend Fraser Muggeridge said, oh, there's this really cool exhibition in South London by Ken Briggs, and nobody's going to it because it's so hard to get to. And so Antony and I thought, it was an exhibition of Ken Briggs. He's a one of the first to use the Swiss style in the UK. He worked a lot for the National Theatre. And so we went to meet Ken Briggs and interviewed him, and we thought it was like the ideal way to start a publishing company. So in 2 weeks' time, we went to meet Ken, we interviewed him, we transcribed the interview, we edited the interview, we designed the book, and we printed it just in 2 weeks so that it would be before the closing of the exhibition. And the last day of the exhibition, we had the book launch and the beginning of occasional papers. And the book is nothing more.
One of the students.
You could turn the sound off. The book is not much more than this. It's just a little pamphlet. But apart from making books, what's just as important to us is this, it's meeting people, is part of the publishing, is the social element to it. Publishing is not just going, here's my book and it's finished. It's all the things that happen around it. Often at a book launch, other books will happen. It's a getting together of, and sharing knowledge and making connections. And this is another one of our early books that's done really well, that came after a conference at St. Bride Library in London. This book has actually funded a lot of our other books. Maybe we'll talk about funding later on, because I'm sure people will have questions. We operate on the motto, one book pays for another, and Occasional Paper is very consciously a side project. We both have our kind of main jobs, and because it's like our first baby in a way, we want to keep it something that gives us pleasure and where we can be very picky about what we publish. How am I doing for time? 6 minutes. These are some other books we published. Natural Enemies of Books came out in the pandemic. It's a history of women in typography. And this is our most recent one, which I'm really proud of. It came out a few months ago. It stars at midday by the Palestinian filmmaker Noor Abed. And Noor was at the Rijksacademie. And when October 7th happened, she could no longer make any work. And she started talking to one of her advisors, Natasha Subramanian, about this. And Natasha encouraged her to write down her memory and her feelings and what she was going through in a diary. And ended up approaching us to publish the diary. So it's the memory of Noor making her film starts somewhere in between, which she made in Palestine right before the genocide happened. And it's very personal recollections accompanied by production shots. So that was Occasional Papers. And I've also just finished my PhD. And I thought I'd put that in there because it was somewhere in the description. And publishing has been really kind of crucial to it, making things public. So I started a PhD, I think, 9 years ago. And it happened when I just moved back to Belgium. And when someone invited me to give a talk for a conference just like this, and they made a posters with my name on it, torn in two, saying the publisher and the designer. And when I started my PhD, I was like, who am I anymore? Am I a publisher? Am I a designer? So it was really a way to try to look at history to find myself in a way. And I started by looking at Richard Hollis's book, Concise History of Graphic Design, and many other graphic design history books, and realized that there wasn't any book on the history of Belgian graphic design. This is the back of Richard's book where he's the index, and you see there's listed the Netherlands, France, Germany, but Belgium is not even in it. So I started talking to other graphic designers. I realized I didn't know anything about Belgian graphic design history, and I started meeting people from a different generation, just asking them, what's up, who were these people? And very much also from my own practice. It was a practice-based PhD, so it was the stuff, I was trying to find people who were like me, people who had similar career paths, similar maybe names that were torn in two between the publisher and the artist, or the publisher and the teacher, and all the different hats. And there isn't an institute of, like we have here, like the Wim Krabel Institute in Belgium, or there wasn't when I started. And there is no archive that's collecting graphic design in Belgium, so I had to go everywhere to go and look for this stuff. So this is a collection of places, archives of literature, archives of social history, local archives, you name it. I went everywhere to look. And I could have kept on collecting, and I ended up with 500 folders on a hard drive, because, of course, graphic design is endless. Where do you begin, and what is... And also, where does the history of graphic design start? And what's even Belgian? Is a Belgian designer living abroad Belgian or not? And so on. I'm going to finish quite soon. So luckily there was
I think no one wants you to. Probably.
Okay, sorry. So stressed. Usually I see how many slides I have left, and I know. Okay, I'll talk a bit slower. So, in the end, there was a design museum in Ghent asked me to make an exhibition, and that was really helpful way to sort of stop collecting and to put all this stuff in a space and share it with other people and start to analyze it and maybe, kind of contain it. And the exhibition took place right before the pandemic, and I organized all the objects according to words that came from my own practice. So education, social relevance, three-dimensionality, typography, economy of means, things like that. And then I wrote about it. For example, what happens when you have work made by anonymous graphic designers? How do you do graphic design history? Is it per object, per person, per period? Things like that. And again, like with occasional papers, the social aspect was really important, so we organized loads of events. And I also invited a collective to have a radio broadcast. So for one day in the vitrine outside the museum, we invited, I think, 20 or 30 current contemporary graphic designers to come and talk about their work, and then they left their work behind, and that was on display for a month as a kind of contemporary annex and a way to ask what's going on today. And I think I will maybe I should show one more picture of the book and then I finish. Sorry. Yeah. So, and then occasional papers published the book that's related to my PhD. Thank you.
Whoa, thanks a lot. It's so impressive to see all the work that you did and how kind of your interest in history and other people and other designs of other people is kind of seeping back, I think, in all of your works in so many different ways. When we were still studying, I still remember the identity of wheels, and that I looked at it and that I questioned, like, oh, how do you come to this idea of making this A like that? And yeah, it's so impressive to see all your work evolving from there. It's thanks a lot. I wrote down many questions, and I mean, also when you're telling all these things, I think, well, how do you do this? How do you manage your time? But I think that's a question for later in the panel. Like, it's a more practical question, but still, you have all these hats also, like you also said. And then you didn't even mention the teaching, which I think is also a big part in your practice. But maybe to start with the book about the Belgian graphic design history of the grid. This book is this kind of collaborative panorama of Belgian graphic design, and it displays this a lot of perspectives on it. And of course, you developed this, and you also developed this exhibition. And you already, when you talked about it briefly, you already said all these questions, like how do you edit, what choices do you make in terms of order or in terms of selection. Can you tell us a little bit more, like a little bit of a glimpse of this editing process and how the book and the exhibition kind of are relating?
Yeah, so the exhibition happened first, and then inside the exhibition I organized lectures, and I invited pretty much everybody I knew anything about Belgian graphic design history, and then a few of those people ended up writing a text for the book. So that's like one chapter. There are quite a few that were talks that became texts. And then there are also a few essays in there that I really wanted to write. One is about colonization, how Belgian graphic design history is complicit in what went down in Congo and Rwanda. Yeah. And then there's another one about unionizing. There was a really strong chamber of Belgian graphic designers in the 60s that unfortunately no longer exist. At a certain point, they even made price agreements between themselves, and they printed them. I have them at home. They said, we're all going to charge the same. Everybody, if you do a poster, it's this much. And so we can't kill each other for prices.
Yeah.
And those are maybe the things that were closest to me that I really wanted to write about. And then in the middle is a section of interviews with people who are sadly disappearing. There, Polly Boo, I met him many times, and he died last year. Some other designers in the book passed away recently, so that felt I guess it all came really from a sense of urgency, like what needs to happen now. What am I most passionate about? Okay, I'll put that in. What do I know needs to happen? And then at the back is a set of monographic texts. Again, some because I knew people were interested in it, and then a few others, like about Janine Behagel. I really desperately wanted to have at least one text about a female designer in the book. And I think it's also acknowledging that it's just scratching the surface. That happens quite often with occasional papers. I think our second or third book was about John Latham. He's a British conceptual artist. And Antony was working in the archive of John Latham at the time. And he at night he would bring the stuff from the archive and I would scan it. And then but it was just... and a lot of people were saying, yeah, he really needs a big monograph. He's a conceptual art. And we were, no, let's just get it out there and then let someone else pick up on it, which often happens. It's kind of acknowledging that, we are not going to be the ones that make the big book, but maybe we don't need to. It's a kind of way to start a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And did he also know that you were taking those documents home and scanning them? Or was
We had permission. We've done 2 books like that, actually. There's one book called Please Come to the Show that we did. And it was a collection of ephemera from the MoMA. MoMA in New York, they have an amazing library, but we knew the librarian, the person who worked at the ephemera collection, and he organized an exhibition that came to Liverpool where we were living, and he brought just basically like suitcases of invites and posters and flyers from the archives. And because I was teaching in close by, we just one night dismantled the whole show, scanned it, and then that became the book. I think if you don't have a lot of money, you have to be creative in other ways to kind of just get it out there. Yeah.
And you mentioned like that you were often scratching the surface, and then in like with a book like Off the Grid, when is the time for you to stop, or when do you know, like at this moment this is now enough, or here I have what I want to show now?
I guess when you're out of money and out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, it was a PhD. I was on a schedule to try and get the PhD out. I knew I couldn't keep going on it. Yeah. But, because that's why I'm not an artist. Also, if I didn't have constraints or kind of some deadline, then things wouldn't happen. And that's why with occasional papers, we also often organize a launch and have the date before the book is ready, because otherwise you don't. It helps. Yeah,
that's probably very recognizable for many people who are here right now. Yeah. But it's also in a way refreshing to hear that it's such a practical reason for, like, when you're out of time or out of money, then that's just when the project ends for now.
Yeah. I think it's also to do with confidence, maybe. Yeah. Neither Antony or I are so like they have big egos that we want to just keep on, I don't know how to explain it.
No, but that shows
sort of okay, it's good enough, let's just do it. Kind of,
Then I have one last question, because also some former students of mine are here, and I also know you from teaching, and I spoke to some of your students also last year, and I know that you, because you do that, you practice that you kind of become your own commissioner, that you do that in your own practice, and that's also an advice that you give to students. And I think that's a really, really good advice. But I was wondering, can you explain a little bit more about that? Can you make that a bit more tangible?
I guess when you're a graphic designer, the client will always be shouting louder, or that's with me at least the case when there's a deadline. So that's why occasional paper is like a perfect self-commissioning agent in a way. You kind of invent a structure to force yourself to have to work for yourself because it gives you oxygen or happiness or it's rewarding.
Yeah.
And if I know I wouldn't do it otherwise. So you have to maybe, like you do with your gallery, your exhibition space, you create a framework that forces you to think outside the box.
Yeah. Yeah, so for you this comes in the first place just from your own personal interest.
Yeah.
That
But I don't think you have to. I mean, lots of people are also happy are just happy doing the job. I mean,
yeah, definitely. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And in the panel there will be more time for questions, also from you. Maybe you also have questions for each other. So now on to the next speakers. Sascha Leopold and François Havegeer, as I was told I can pronounce his name totally in Dutch. They are a Paris-based graphic design studio syndica, and they work on editorial design, exhibitions and publishing with a focus on questioning and pushing the boundaries of what graphic design can be. And as if running a graphic design studio is not enough, they also founded Empire Books, a publishing house, with which they explore the intersections of design, art, and critical thought. And I think one of their most notable projects is Revue Faire, a magazine that takes an in-depth look at graphic design. And it's not just about showcasing a work, but analyzing the field, posing questions to the field, as a kind of thoughtful cousin of design magazines, always posing a kind of critical question at the dinner table. And if that isn't enough, they also started an exhibition space in Paris together with MM Paris, the graphic design studio, called Program Me. So, as their name expresses, Revue Faire, it's really about doing, or an urge for doing. Which, when I hear your publishing schedule, I think really resonates. Like you publish every you design every 2 weeks and you publish every month your magazine. So this is all together. This is a lot. So I'm really curious how you do that and to hear a bit more about it. So please welcome Revue Faire. No, you can both go there.
Yeah, okay, with only one mic. Maybe we will use it.
You have one. Oh, yeah.
So
you both have there. It's
yeah,
okay.
we have a microphone.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm François Havegeer, and he's Sascha Leopold.
There is better. Thank you to be there. And thank you, Simone, for your introduction. I think it's resuming everything, so I'm not sure we're going to say a lot of things more. We are designers, and as designers, we are also publishers, we are also curators, we are also gallerists, I don't know, but mainly as designers. We get bored with a lot of stuff, and we are getting bored very quickly, so we also like our landscape to be a bit full. So we are designing graphic design identities. This is funny because, Sarah, you were talking about what can we do when you are obliged to use a logotype for an institution. And for a current institution, we are doing the identity. We are using the logotype we were obliged to use on fake 3D mockups, like probably printed objects which would never happen. And we designed in the beginning a lot of books with different artists or art historians that were not that well distributed. I mean, they were printed, quite interesting. The project itself was interesting, but then we were so involved in the publishing part, in the printing part, and the books were only on view or sometimes on sale in a small gallery. And we found it a bit frustrating, so we decided to build the first publishing house named Tombolo Press with a friend and previous teacher of us named Thierry Chancogne, with also Catherine Guéral, who is an artist, a graphic design historian and graphic designers. And then we started Empire Books, only François and I from our side, and each time focusing on graphic design done by Syndicat. In this publishing house, we are sharing projects with arts institutions, artists, monograph, also self-initiated books, like reprinting some historical graphic standards, also doing some catalogs for specific art collections.
Doing this publishing house was also a way to continue collaborating with artists we are collaborating with, but in a different manner, because you are not only the designer, you are creating the project from scratch to the end, and after you are also defending it a bit later.
Maybe we can do a small stop with the images. Thank you. The publishing house makes us able also to make the discussion with artists and collector, or sometimes with ourselves, more clear or more strong. It doesn't mean that it wasn't sometimes very hard, but it makes stuff a bit stronger, I think. Also with a quite huge interest into the printing process and the binding process. As we said, we also did different exhibitions about printing process, binding process, or small printed objects. Most of the time regarding the relationship between the object itself, is materials, and the content is sharing, and in sharing as an object, as a size, as a way to be distributed. And
in 2017, we start doing a huge project called Revue Faire, which is a magazine about graphic design, image, art, photography, design. It's starting because we were wondering with Sasha what could be the tools at that time to understand more graphic design, where it comes from, why, and to our point of view, there were not that much a graphic design magazine with analytic, critical article about specific projects, and that's how it starts.
It was also the end of this period where there was a lot of very interesting blogs or websites about very interesting graphic design or art actuality, but just showcasing some nice visual works without a lot of critical or context of these images. Let's say the beginning of Instagram. And we felt a bit frustrating by the lack of critical or analytical matter regarding images or text or posters or period of graphic design. And then we were remembering, I don't know if it will be clear for you there, because in France there was something called les fiches atlas, which were very thin piece of papers
about one specific topic. Like if you are subscribing to a year, you will have on each issue one different animal from a different country. And,
or, for example, there was a binder about dinosaurs, and each week there was a specific name of dinosaurs, and I was a big fan of dinosaurs.
And our idea was to do a bit the same, but about graphic design. So we are building a season
on dinosaurs.
Not only, but and each season it's about 15 issues for the 3 first season, and now it's 12. And our idea is to have on this season different topics. So it could be about type design, about books, about graphic design identity, about an exhibition, about
brain visualization. These topics are very...
Yeah, it's writing by James Langdon, so
yeah.
It's always weird subjects.
The guy you should not invite to write a very specific, very strong or very serious subject. No, we love James. James, if you're there. The interesting things to our eyes was also to produce let's say, a small object which will not be a kind of big book. As Sara, you said, like, it's not the book about this topic. It's an introduction, an essay, an error. It's something about a topic, so you can be introduced to it from a point of view, because there is nowadays, I don't know, about 20 authors writing for Revue Faire, with very different ways of writing. Some are graphic designers, or some have very, I don't know, hard to read, even in French, writers. Sometimes it's based on interviews, so it gives us a different rhythm of readings. And on very different topics, but from about, I don't know, 30,000 signs in English and 30,000 signs in French. So it means that it's not a thesis. It's the beginning of something. Then I'm pretty sure you can find the big book about half of the topics or something different, but it's a kind of introduction.
And also, each issue, it's written by a different author. And for us, it was also important to do the graphic design of the magazine, also because by the past we had few articles in graphic design magazine, but we were a bit disappointed because the text was interesting, and it was only the image we gave to them. So sometimes the image which are illustrated, the article is totally different than the topic they are talking about. So for us, it was quite important to build in the same time with the author a different lecture of the topic. So that's why for each magazine, sometimes we are changing the paper, the way of reproducing images.
And yeah, in a very, let's say, economical, but very small budget and very economical object, to be able to play a bit and not being bored by the project itself and the kind of repetitive aspect of it, publishing it every 15 days or each month, can be a bit boring. And yeah, the other thing that François was talking about is the way images were reproduced, because sometimes people were asking for an image of a book we designed or some stuff like that, and the same image was reprinted in different magazines or blogs, and it was looking exactly the same, like a spread, like a book as a spread. And it was a bit, frustrating. So we decided to do our best. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. But to be able to build with the author or with the studio the author is talking about, to build a specific iconography. So sometimes by inviting photographers, sometimes by scanning ourselves at the studio some stolen images, as Sara said. We are doing exactly the same, I discover. But to have a kind of specific energy connected to each topic, we are working with the author. So, and we just launched. Sorry, we can continue. We just. Is it in a loop? So this is Empire Books, but it's fine. I think it's going in the other way now.
But anyway,
we can go in the. Yeah. It's random stuff, I think.
Which is nice.
It's nice. So now that we have published 49 issue, we might publish up to 60 issues this year. We just started the season 4, so as François said, the subscription is based on 12 issues a year, focusing on very different topics. Here is the machine which are talking and writing. There will be also a specific issue on the Palace of Masonic Typography by Richard Nissen, you might know. The current, just recently launched, is the relationship Lawrence Weiner, who was a conceptual poetic artist, has to typography and graphic design. It's a text done by Joris Kritis, who is analyzing different previous texts, and also an interview with Linda van Dersen and Nora Turato. No, I'm talking from people from Amsterdam, François.
Yeah.
And we need to thank people from Amsterdam. Yeah, and we need to do a special thanks to Matthew Lohman, who is not there, I think, but who helped us to build the Jan van Toorn, sorry for my accent, and the Wim Crowell issue, the issue 38 of Revue Faire. So if you want to have a look or subscribe, you can do it on revuefaire.eu.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What is really good is that we have 2 students from the HKU, and they have beautiful names, but that also means that I forget their names all the time. One is called Tess, and the other is called Talisha. I'm not sure if they're here. Oh yeah, there. And Tess and Talisha have set up a table in the hall with Revue Faire. So I brought some of my own. This is the one of Jan van Toorn and Wim Crowell that they were talking about. Well, I just have brought 5 of my own. But for instance, what is the most beautiful book? Stanley Brown. It's also very much linked to Dutch history, of course. Production process, printing on demand, designer publishers. So what we are doing today here, designer publishers. So Talisha and Tess, they have a table with Revue Faire, with books by Occasional Papers, and with books by Bikini Books, but that will come later on. It's now my turn to ask you some questions. And to be honest, I'm a little bit... my mind is shaken up a lot because on your website it says "Il s'agit de faire." It's about doing. Well, you do a lot. So I was thinking, if you make 12 issues a year, and you have also Empire, you have Syndicat, you do your own. You do also work for clients, I suppose. You also sleep, and you come to Amsterdam, and you have fun together. How do you prioritize? How do you combine all the stuff that you do?
We don't know. Like, it's we are doing what is most urgent, I would say. Like there is no Monday for Revue Faire, Tuesday for Empire Books, then Thursday for Musée de l'Imprimerie or whatever.
It's funny because on my Instagram feed there is ads for kind of, I don't know, Google organizer or some specific stuff that might help you to be organized in the company. Like from 9 to 10 you need to do that. Like we can't manage that. Like,
but in the end,
and also because we are a bit stupid. Like we are working, we can just work 1 hour or something and then it's over. We need to do something else. The good thing is that sometimes when you are tired, you can just pack some orders or just pack 300
sheets,
envelopes for Revue Faire subscribers.
Yeah.
And we are also packing.
Packing.
Yeah, we are also postmen.
Yeah.
But we are working with very good postmen guys too.
Yeah. And does it mean, because I know you a little bit, but I don't know you super well, but I always feel that you are very convivial, that you you have fun together, you give each other space. First of all, I'm just stupidly curious how you got to know each other and how you grew into that role. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
We were in the same school. Sasha was 1 year.
What's secondary or art academy or what?
Art academy.
Oh yeah.
With our teacher was Thierry Chancon, which is now author of Revue Faire. And we were just friends, having drinks in school, but nothing more. And after the school, Sasha started working with Pierre Bernard,
a French guy who did with different other French guy, Grappus Studio.
There's a lot
graphic
of
design studio.
Pierre Bernard has a lot in the Stedelijk Museum, so I think.
Yeah, and very known for the Erasmus Prize, etc.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
And then they were looking for an intern, so I asked. I was taken.
And he spent 3 months doing nothing because Pierre thought we had to take an intern and there was nothing to do. So he was making a photo montage of my face.
It was a bit long.
Posting it on Facebook.
Yeah.
I had a look. There is at least 20 fake pictures of my face on a bicycle, and that was very nice Photoshop style.
After I start working to the studio also, and during the evening we were staying because we have the keys, and Pierre was okay about it, and we start working like that together because it was more. It was easiest for us to start working by being two than just one, because we did more things together, and we never said, oh, "Come on, we should do a studio together." It just happened.
It just happened, yeah. And maybe you told us, but I didn't hear it properly. When did you start?
2012, like the official date.
Yeah.
But we were working a bit together before, but without the syndicate's name.
Yeah, so and then it grew into what you told us in Revue Faire, in Syndicat, in different branches.
The publishing house Empire is starting in 2015 or 16, and Revue Faire 17.
Oh yeah.
What a memory, François.
One of your mission statements or one of your wishes is that you say that you started Revue Faire, amongst other things, because you thought there was a lack of critical writing on graphic design. Well, now you've been doing that with Revue Faire for many years. Also, we have occasional papers. Nina is growing. There's, of course, other parties who do that. But also in these years that you've been working on Revue Faire, do you think that this lack of critical writing, how do you see that now?
Maybe we need to correct something, because it looks very ambitious when you are pronouncing it, but it wasn't at all. Like it was mainly from a French point of view. In France, there was a magazine named Étape. I don't know if it's known worldwide. It was very interesting until, I would say, 2012, something like that, was when there was a guy named Etienne Hervy who was in charge of it. And then it slowly became a kind of, I don't want to be impolite, but a kind of printed blog. I mean, kind of current exhibitions or current launch or stuff like that, but without a lot of text.
It was a bit weird, because most of the time the magazine was about actuality in graphic design and in communication. But when the magazine were print, like, it was not anymore actuality. So they start doing it a bit differently. But at the end, it was just short text, and you can find it on several blogs online. So.
And do you know a little bit about, maybe it's an impossible question, because when I saw this, a lack of critical writing on graphic design, I also think that's the case in the Netherlands. It's not, I see that Max Bruinsma is sitting there, and of course he's a great writer, but the variety that you have in visual art, or that you have an architecture that has many critics, that they exchange with each other, that there is a sort of culture. And I very much hope that Alice and Richard, that they are building on young people picking up issues, writing on it. Just it doesn't need to be the text or the book, as you told it, but that there is a sort of very vivid culture. I don't know if you know a little bit about that for the Netherlands, or...
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the only, let's say, maybe ambitious way we decided to start the magazine was not to have a kind of editorial guideline. I mean, we are trying to show some old stuff from the 70s, very new stuff, but without any idea of actuality. But it's a kind of, I don't know, accidents, and together it makes maybe a kind of summary. But it's not. We are doing our best to do one issue a year about type design, but most of the time it's kind of, I don't know, weird topics about type design. We are not type designers, and we are not type lovers in the sense of we are not that geek to be type lovers. But we love types, of course. And the idea was there was not, at least in France, a lot of experiences. And
also there were not that much graphic designer which were writing about graphic design or about design or practice, image or whatever. And it was quite important for us to have this magazine with different way of writing, different author, different point of view.
But then, I don't know how it started, but we said, yeah, okay, we decided to translate each book we were publishing on Empire Book. And it makes, at some point, even if it costs a lot, we made most of the book bilingual, so French, because there's not a lot of English readers in French.
Yeah, and also you have many bilingual ones as well. Simone and I have a very good sign system when it takes too long. And
I already did it for like 5 times. But finally you saw it.
So it means that we need to keep, because I have still many questions, we need to keep them until we do the discussion together. So it is my pleasure to introduce Nina Paim to you. Nina is Brazilian. She now lives in Portugal, in Porto. But I know Nina because she used to study at the Rietveld in Amsterdam, and a long time ago we worked together. We did a book which was called Conditional Design Workbook, which was a super success, really. And Nina, at the time you were an assistant, or sort of you worked with Julia Born, quite a famous Swiss designer. I know that Nina left and went to Switzerland, and then once in a while we would see each other there, and you had a baby and a pram, and of course life changed. But I also saw, a little bit later on, so some people know me, but some people don't know me. I'm the publisher of Valise, and I was approached by the Kunsthochschule in Basel to make this book, Design Struggles. The person who invited me was the professor there, that was Claudia Mareis. And then she said, yeah, and I'm working with Nina Paim. And I said, well, I know Nina since a long time. So Nina and Claudia did this book together. Unfortunately, this is out of print, but the whole PDF can be downloaded for free online on our website, on the Valise website. And it's a very beautiful title. It's called Design Struggles. And what I saw when I saw what you were doing in Switzerland, and then later also with Futuress, I'm not going to elaborate because you need to do that yourself, that it is about these struggles. But luckily it's not just about the struggles, it's also where we can find friendship, where we can find energy, where we can find each other, and how that feeds back into graphic design again. So I'm happy to give the floor to Nina.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah? Thank you, everyone, for
being here today on a very cold Monday evening. And thank you so much to like all the speakers before me. I have like, you know, this moment where like everybody spoke and my head is bubbling with questions and thoughts, and I wish I could just fast forward to the conversation, but here I am, I have to linger on. And I wrote something to not get too derailed, because I must confess that I was confused with the setup. So what you'll see here is a series of images of my work. It's not chronological because I figured it was impossible to be chronological in such a space. And I will talk over it, but I'm not going to illustrate this talk. It's not about mismatching these images. Sometimes it will make sense, sometimes it won't. So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Suzanne, especially Astrid, for this beautiful invitation and for being such a wonderful hosts. Astrid, I really can't express how grateful I am to have worked with you at the very start of my career. Over the years, you've been an important influence in my life, you know, in these little moments that you met me with the Prem. And your advice has given me the strength to take the leap into publishing. Sara, I could say the same about you. The same goes for you. Since inviting me to speak about feminist publishing right before the pandemic, you've been a true spark of inspiration. And again, today you have refueled us, I think, us all with inspiration. Being here with you both and with everyone, it's a testament of the importance of support networks. And that's what I want to talk about here today. Though I'm just at the beginning of my journey as a publisher, I am deeply committed to paying all of this forward to supporting younger, newer generations yet to come. Publishing is or should be an ecosystem. I see my own practice as an effort to contribute and care for this ecosystem. Though I'm now busy growing Bikini Books, my publishing house, no one is ever only working on their garden alone. Our projects flourish better when others do too, when there are more independent feminist publishers out there, feminist platforms for design politics out there, feminist book fairs, feminist symposia, events, teaching, workshops, and all of that. Over the years, I have helped to initiate, grow, and sustain some of those initiatives, which are some of the images that you see here today. Nearly 15 years ago, I moved from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where I come from, to Amsterdam, where we are here today. I came from a 6-month exchange at the Gerrit Retail Academy, but my life took an unexpected turn, or rather, turns. After living in the Netherlands, Germany, and Switzerland 3 years ago, I moved to Portugal. My professional path has been as meandering as my own migratory journey, shaped by the spaces and the relationships I made wherever I went, and some which have followed me around too. Though trained as a graphic designer, I've adopted many terms to describe what I do: curator, facilitator, educator, editor. But only very recently have I dared to call myself a publisher. This has happened exactly 2 months ago. So it's feels a bit of a bold thing to say even. Last November, I launched the first Bikini Books title, a book called Briar Levitt on design, feminism, and friendship. It is a long-form illustrated interview with Briar Levitt, a graphic designer who started her career working as art director for Bitch, the legendary magazine for which more than 25 years was a feminist response to pop culture. Briar later fell in love with teaching and became what she called an accidental professor. She also directed the much-acclaimed documentary Graphic Means, which looks at the transformations in graphic design production from hot metal to phototypesetting to desktop computing, all through a feminist lens that highlights the micropolitics of practice and work. Briar's meandering journey made me think of my own unplanned, undesigned, serendipitous path. But isn't that life? Brian and I talked about all of that and much more, and the result is this green little book that you might have seen already passing through, which I co-published with the Brazilian publisher Clube do Livro do Design, run by my friend in São Paulo, Teresa Bettinardi. This collaboration allowed the book to be released simultaneously in English and in Portuguese. Co-publishing was a practical choice for someone starting a business without much capital, but it was also a way of working through friendship. In the interview, Brian naturally emphasized the importance of friendships throughout her career.
As I said, publishing is an ecosystem which is made of and sustained by relationships, friendships. But in a heteronormative capitalist society like ours, we don't spend nearly as much time talking about friendships as we do talking about our romantic relationships. And I am committed to helping shift this conversation. After launching the book in Portland last November, Braia traveled to São Paulo in December to launch the Portuguese version. Being present in both shores at the same time is something that I, myself, alone, would never have been able to do. But the collaboration with Teresa makes things possible. It is another reminder of how we need each other to realize and pursue our dreams. So Bikini is now out there and it has a life of its own. So I started receiving unsolicited pitches. They arrive at my mailbox with a kind of regularity. While I need to be selective about the projects I want to take on, I'm amazed by why people approach Bikini and why they think a feminist design publisher should put on. Last week, one of these pitches sparked a flood of questions which I would like to share with you today. The pitch came from someone I deeply admire who proposed pairing an original essay she wrote in Portuguese with another important feminist article from the 2000s, translated from English to Portuguese. When she first presented the idea, she was adamant that the text was completely final, explaining that it had even been copy-proofed. Still, after saying that, we talked for another hour. She shared some of the books she'd like to see out there, and I shared some of my hopes for Bikini too. The desire to publish critical yet accessible stories on the politics of design, narratives that bring people closer together, that are evocative, engaging, mesmerizing maybe, where readers learn new things without feeling inadequate or excluded. Later that evening, I read her text. And while I enjoyed it, I had questions. There were jumps and references I didn't understand, and thoughts that linger in my mind. I tried to imagine how this piece could work in English, which is likely to be Bikini's main language if I want to make a living as a publisher. And I became convinced that some references needed to be contextualized. So I began envisioning a book. This is, in essence, editing. The ability to see a text as not yet finished. The ability to see potential and future pathways for pushing a text further. As writers, we often think of our texts as finished. We've seen them a million times. We are tired, and there's a limit to our own capacity. An editor, on the other hand, can see the piece anew, as something still malleable. Though most people might think of it as touching a text, editing may take many forms: listening, noticing, highlighting, restructuring, shaping, adding, and sometimes subtracting. I see it mostly as a relationship, and like in any relationship, it requires negotiation and affection. The making of a book is always relational. It involves many hands and many minds collaborating to shape a text into a material object, enhancing it, deepening it, structuring it, so that it can resonate more, circulate further, and inspire more people. This is not purely an activist drive, of course. Books are material objects that exist within capitalism. They need to appeal to audiences in order to sell, to generate income that enable authors, writers, editors, translators, copy editors, proofreaders, designers, and distributors to be remunerated fairly for their work. So I wrote this artist back saying that after reading the material and reflecting on how these two texts could reach a broader audience, I thought it would be good for us to go through a few editorial steps. In other words, I said we would need to talk, to exchange ideas, and to work together to shape the project. We would need to enter a relationship. Her response came the next day, sharp and resolute. She insisted that the text was final, unchangeable, and untranslatable. I understood her point, though I couldn't quite help feeling a sense of sadness. There was a wall between us, differences keeping that relationship from happening. But if we were to enter it, we would be entering a contact zone. Writing about the experience of teaching a course centered on the Americas and its diverse cultural histories, literary critic Mary Louise Pratt described the contact zone as a social space where cultures meet, clash, and grapple with each other, often in contexts of highly asymmetrical power relations, such as colonialism, slavery, and their aftermaths. The context zone emerges when speakers come from different classes or cultures, or when one party holds authority while the other either submits to it or challenges it. A text within a context zone can be interpreted in vastly different ways, depending on the reader's position. In such a space, everybody had a stake in nearly everything we read, but the range and kinds of stakes varied widely. The literary arts of the context zone, as Mary-Louise Pratt describes, include ethnography, transculturation, critique, collaboration, bilingualism, mediation, parody, denunciation, imaginary dialogue, and vernacular expression. However, the risks of the context zone are just as significant: miscomprehension, incomprehension, and the radical heterogeneity of meaning. Pratt highlights that working in the context zone requires recognizing that anything expressed will be interpreted in profoundly diverse and often unpredictable ways. In practical terms, editing is far easier outside the context zone, when author and editor share too many similarities, when everybody's the same, right? Engaging in a relationship across difference, and here I'm speaking specifically across racial, ethnic, gender, and all kinds of differences. In the context zone is much more challenging. It requires all parties to be vulnerable. As Pratt describes, there is peril in the context zone. In the context zone, no one is excluded, but no one is truly safe either. Recognizing this vulnerability led Pratt's group to value what they called safe houses, and today would most likely say safe spaces or even brave spaces, spaces where difficult conversations could happen with less risk. But there is always risk. We can always get hurt. Every space, whether literary or physical, operates through a set of exclusions and inclusions. Some of them are pretty obvious, like the language we use or the existence of an entrance fee. Most often, however, these structures are hidden. In education, for example, artist Annette Krauss has emphasized how there is always a hidden curriculum, an undeclared or an invisible set of norms, values, and beliefs and behaviors that establish hierarchies and authority. Much of my work as an editor, curator, and educator has centered on making these hidden curriculums visible and fostering safer spaces or braver spaces where the challenging of norms can happen across differences. This has often started by finding ways to bring diverse people into the room together, but also establishing codes of conduct and care practices that help environments where people are more prone to share, they are more prone to connect. It is an imperfect work that at times has also meant facilitating communication, transposing and transliterating. I've always thought of my work as the work of setting the stage, making the room, and that often begins by understanding that we are speaking through miscomprehension, through cacophony, that we are never truly speaking the same language, so to speak. From organizing workshops, events, and exhibitions to everything else I've practiced, no space has felt to me more transformative and vulnerable than the text. Here I'm referring to the text in its editing phase, the text as a work in progress, a space where people meet and become vulnerable to each other. They share what they know and what they don't know. They share what they see and what they don't see, and sometimes that is embarrassing. In this phase, editors as first readers often providing the author with insights to refine and hone their voice. This doesn't mean that editors will have power over, though there is certainly power here, like in all relationships, but that the text becomes a stage where a conversation happens. A copy editor's comment, for example, over a particular choice of term can prompt a whole host of reflections on bias, on ignorance, something previously unnoticed to the editor or the writer or the designer. It is in these little moments that we grow and we transform, that we see the world through a slightly different perspective, because it is in those moments that thinking is taking place. I'm thinking of thinking not as an individual practice, but as a collective, as in thinking with. And these collective thinking moments can be truly exhilarating. While readers will seldom perceive the many voices and perspectives that shape the text, those involved in its creation will understand it and they will feel it. And every time they will reread it, they will remember the ways in which they've become entangled. As Mary-Louise Pratt writes, along with rage, incomprehension, and pain, there were some exhilarating moments of wonder and revelation, of mutual understanding and new wisdom, the joys of the contact zone. Indeed, in the contact zone, Transformation across difference can be beautiful and joyful. This is my mission, publishing as the pursuit of the joys of the contact zone. I haven't yet replied to this author that contacted me, but maybe my answer will begin with thoughts we'll be thinking together here today. Thank you.
Oh, that's the microphone. Oh, thanks so much. That was really amazing to hear the text that you prepared so carefully, and I think also how you prepared this presentation already says so much about how you want to work and how you weigh your words and how you, how a collaboration and a very honest collaboration and a very personal, in many occasions, I think collaboration really shapes what you do. And having these beautiful images also on the background that where there are also so many people on the photos all the time. I think they really illustrate that really beautifully. So yeah, it was really great to hear more about your bold voice behind all kinds of curtains, showing all kinds of things and making kind of way for new voices or older voices, but to be heard in different ways. And I think maybe that's for all of you, really what you do and how you talk about this, like not making the perfect book, but just opening up space in a way. Yeah, thank you so much. I have a lot of questions and I don't really know where to begin. And also we are a little tight on time. So I think I'm gonna ask one question to you and then we're gonna go to the panel questions. Yeah. So also in preparation, Astrid also sent me your beautiful honorary speech that you did with the purple hat on. Yeah, sorry, I watched it and I thought it was great too. And in the speech you also mentioned like nothing happens in isolation, everything is relations. And it's so clear that this collaboration and community is so central to your work. And I was wondering, how do you navigate an authorship and a kind of decision making within those projects?
Is it on?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always project to project in a way, but so it's hard to describe, and I also think it's also context to context. So it's hard to kind of give a sort of all-encompassing word, but like in some projects that I've done, I was maybe the initial spark, but then other people came in, and then the moment that the people came in, there is like a negotiation of how do we work, and then there's always material conditions, budgets, which allocate structures, and I think like I think a lot about collaboration, and I find it sometimes a bit of a dangerous word. I feel like it's one of these terms that is really overused and become like anything can become a collaboration. I think relationships are there's always structure in the room, as I said. There is always power, there is always hierarchy, there is always like, and part of the work that I'm committed to doing, which I think of it as also a kind of feminist practice, is to kind of make those power structures visible, you know, and to articulate them, because I feel like making structures invisible visible is a way of disarming them ever so slightly, you know, or like, and creating ways of how decisions are made together. And sometimes I think like it's always relational, so it really depends on like the other party. So it's not about me imposing my set of conditions, but about the kind of how that relationship is evolved, you know. But sometimes there are people that you realize maybe are not interested in entering a dialogue, and I feel like in anything that I do, I'm interested in the dialogue. I'm interested in That is what I mean.
That's a kind of catalyst. That's where the projects all kind of start. Yeah. Thank you. So we have some time but we have 2 minutes, according to our schedule, to do a panel talk with all of you.
Yeah, but maybe I also thought maybe we can do a sort of tweetrapsraket. I don't know the English word, so that you do it in 2 steps. Then I thought if you have very urgent questions for each other, that we first do that, and then we ask Michelle and Bart to do the light, to have more light in the room, and that then we try to include you when you have questions that we include it. But maybe first, if you, because I feel that many of the things that you're expressing, that you're doing, there's many links. Of course, you all do it differently, but I'm curious if you have questions for each other that you think, now is the moment that I want to ask it. Is that okay with you, Simone?
Yeah, totally. If it's okay for you.
I don't have any specific question, but in remarks to Nina's purpose, I think this kind also of moments where you are meeting, we already know, I think, Sara and Nina's practice, but from more or less far away. I think it's not close now, but we met in the contact zone, which is this kind of scary scene, but this is the beginning of the contact zone.
I have a question.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Hello. I don't know. Yes, it works. Do you have a plan for the future?
Is it for me?
Both of you, all of you, for the Revue Fair and for Bikini.
We are supposed to have a drink in 30 minutes. This is the future. No, honestly, it's not. It's a joke. It's not a joke. It's real. But yeah, we've got some stuff to do tomorrow and next week. But then we need to have a drink, and it's more or less. It's a kind of example. Like
there is a cartoon in France called Minus et Cortex, which is quite funny. Because we are a duo, like sometimes they are calling us Tic and Tac or Minus et Cortex. And the plan for Minus et Cortex is to, I don't know the word in English.
He's trying to make fun in English, but
yeah, which is hard.
He knows 30 words in English. So
I give you all of them, the words.
I'm going to try to translate it later.
Nina, do you have questions for one of the other ones?
I have them, but maybe they will happen in the bar. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
No, but I also think you're making a joke out of it. But is there a more serious answer to the question?
Honestly, our work is like that. We don't want to be fun, but we don't have plan for the future. But of course, we have some kind of fantasy about meeting more people or maybe do something we have in mind, but there is nothing precise, and we don't want to prepare stuff. So we just need to engage it, and maybe it will work, maybe not, but maybe it will stop. But just to try to communicate with.
I have the opposite problem actually, because I feel like the time spent, books are really slow moving, evolving things. Like they take a really, really long time. Before I started Bikini, I was working on a digital platform that I co-founded called Futuress. And besides the fact that it was very precarious, you know, the time of a digital text, it didn't feel like right to me. Like I think like things need to go deep, and then it's almost too difficult to do that in a sort of like fast time pace. So what I have now is ideas for a book that I don't know when they will become realized, because they require time, and oftentimes they require the author's time. So one of the books that I in my humble ignorance, I thought it was going to be the first things that I was going to publish, is a book called Color Riots, which is a collection of essays about colonial histories of colors. So like red, yellow, blue. But then a lot of these essays, they're written by Luisa Prado, who's a design, an artist and a design researcher, is a really good friend of mine. And I've commissioned several of these essays while I was at Futuress. And I thought they needed to be longer and deeper, and you know. And as I was working with her as an editor, like the text also changed, and I realized that she was finding her own voice. So the first one is very impersonal. The second one, she appears, as a voice. There's an I pronoun there that does things in the text. And I really thought that this was going to be one of the first books that I would launch with Bikini, but I'm still working with her because I have to wait her own pace. And that's sometimes the part that drives me a bit crazy with publishing. So my question maybe to you is like, how do you deal with this sometimes impossible time frame of publishing, which is very slow? And then, of course, there's the economy, the material questions of, we need to pay rent and things like that. So how do you, what is the advice that you can give me?
I'm going to make a joke. No, the only story I've got is regarding the Revue Faire issue on manual reader work. From designing books to furniture, etc. It was supposed to be published around the issue 25, and it's still not published. And there is maybe an author who mostly disappear. There is many books or ideas like that.
And how is that for you, Sara?
Revue Faire on manual reader will happen before the end of Revue Faire, one day.
We don't publish that many books, so they take the time they need to take. Some take a long time, and others are really fast. But we don't have a schedule, or I don't even know what we'll publish next year. Or there are some books that we've been talking about for ages that might come out, but it doesn't really matter. We usually try to make the deadline to give the books to ID to go to New York Art Book Fair, but often we're just too late. So yeah, even that, yeah.
Can I ask a question also to all of you, also about publishing, but the time aspect, but also maybe the more practical aspect, like how do you get these books to really appear in the sense of like also in a financial sense? So how do you make that happen, and how, just in general, this is maybe a bold Dutch question, but how do you make a living? Just for all of you, but maybe Sara. Sara, you can start.
I am obviously not making a living of books yet, since I launched my first book in November, so I'll skip that question.
Yeah, we don't make a living from it. We put money in it. Yeah.
Yeah, but what money? Like, how do you navigate that? How do you?
It changes completely per book. Like Noor's book, we had some money saved up from sales. We paid for that straight away, no question. Then books before that, we've had artists with grants, maybe with research grants or stuff, and then they've put the money into the printing. We have 2 authors that are paid royalties, but that's not because we're stingy, but because it's a lot of administration to have to calculate how many books and then how much. We prefer to, if people are in that situation, to just agree on a lump sum. So people that get paid are the printers, the authors, if you work with a designer, but very rarely do we have money to pay a designer. That's why I end up designing the books for free.
Yeah.
But it's also because it's not something we really want to be part of occasional papers, the economy. We are really bad at it, Antony and I. And you could make it. I think you're probably much better. I mean, you managed to do it. Yeah.
A deep sigh. Yeah. Yeah, but it's also that you work for years and years and years without earning a penny, and then at a certain moment there's this tipping point. It's also grants and subsidies, and I'm not ashamed of that. It's also something that you earn over the years. So it's not just earning that subsidy or earning that grant, but it's also earning trust and earning, for instance, that Claudia invited me to work on with you.
You know that it was me, no?
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. yeah. But anyhow, I think because there's this, I get a little bit nervous, there's this clock that is not going up but down. So I think we should, if possible, Michelle or Bart, maybe you can put on the lights. I think it's really important that we have a little bit of space left to have questions. And I wanted to ask Talisa and Tess, maybe you, if there's somebody who wants to ask a question, that we take one of your mics and that you go to that person who wants to ask the question. Are they still here?
But already, if you have a question, just raise your hand.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can
and
also
then we
repeat
organize
the
it.
question.
Yeah. Come on.
We know you want to know everything.
And also, probably the beer and the wine is waving at you and down at the bar. But yeah, there is somebody.
Oh, thank you, Francois.
You're welcome.
A question for Sara. In the end, you said, I end up designing the books for free myself. Sounds like it's a really nasty job to do. That's something you don't want to do. But isn't that also why you started it in the first place, to develop a certain visual language that you cannot do with your clients? Or do you only have really cool cultural clients where you can do only nice things?
Yeah, it's not why I started occasional papers for the designing. The designing is usually an afterthought. So, oh yeah, we have to design it and I don't have time. It's usually quite simple. I do have a lot of nice clients. The work I'm more proud of as a designer is usually for clients, because then I'm really trying to design really well. And with occasional papers, it's like, oh, I have to do the editing and the organizing, and the designing is like part of it. It's maybe it's more honest. It's less trying to show off design, I guess, than the client work where you're trying to be a snazzy designer. She's another, yeah. But yeah, it's a pleasure to do, because you don't have a client like a marketing campaign person, or yeah.
Yeah.
Is that okay for you? Is there somebody else? Yeah, Alice.
Oh no, not all the speakers. Now we have to answer all the questions.
That's a lot of mic. All right. Thanks, everyone. That was fascinating, and thanks for sharing all of those personal experiences. I just have a simple question about, for each of you, the extent to which you, as designers, design the distribution of your, or the way in which your books go out into the world. Perhaps maybe you could answer it ideally, and your ideal for that, and then the reality for that. And maybe what I have in my mind is what Peter Bielak used to do with Works That Work magazine, which I always really admired, where he had a little widget on a website where you could put in how much space you had in your suitcase and where you were going, and then he would give you a certain number of copies to distribute there, ensuring the kind of social aspect of distribution. And I know you do subscription. I think you all have different models. So maybe, Nina, you can do the ideal, right? Because you're starting out. So.
Well, I don't know yet what the ideal would be, but I think I have to figure out how to calculate production costs and price points so that the books get distributed. And distributors, who are beautiful people sitting here today, they do take a big percentage on the cover price. So I have to figure out how the economy works with that percentage. That's what I've learned in my 2 months of trajectory. But I think that I need to do a lot of work also contacting the bookstores, because I have a hunch that my market is not an exclusive design market, and maybe the bookstores that actually are could be potentially interested in my books, they are not in the radar of IDEA. And so that might mean that I need to get feminist or kind of more social counterculture bookstores to that maybe don't get art books or architecture books or design books regularly to contact the distributor. That might mean actually getting multiple distributors. But I think the logics need to work for, I need to figure out my production cost and price point for the distributor, which is mathematics that I don't know if that I'm able to solve at this point in time.
And then you guys do the subscription model, which I think, if you just take the review fair as an example, which is cool because you get the money up ahead and a kind of built-in distribution. Does that work how it sounds?
There is different points, because there is Empire Books, and so in Empire Books there is books we are financing ourselves, books which are 90% financed by a collection, an art institution or something like that. And the very specific project, which is Revue Faire, which economy is based on, let's say, 70% subscribers, which make the basis to be sure that along the year we will be able to publish to the end, maybe. And then the distribution, which takes a bit of time. We are running the seventh year, and it's getting better and better each year. So we can say there is an ideal way or world, but it's going higher and higher, if we can say it's high. But we are a bit, I don't know, interested into this kind of economical, but after 5 seconds we are a bit bored too. So
I think we have space for one short, really short question, and then we need to wrap up. Is there somebody who's jumping on you in the middle? Can you give your microphone to the guy in the middle?
I was wondering, when you were saying that it's getting better and better from 2017 to now with the Revue Faire publication, why is that? Why is it getting better and better? Is it the design? Is it marketing? Is it
the money?
What is it? Because, yeah, also more money for a better production of the issues. And
I mean the money. Like if it was making us rich, like we are technically and financially we are running a company in France, but the Revue Faire is a non-profit association. It's let's say apart. And I don't know, but we on 15 issue or 12 issue a year, we probably get between 4,000 and 5,000 for both. So it's a bit of money, but it's not some money. It's just a part of the whole project. But it makes us able to pay more the author. From the beginning, each year we are trying to upgrade, I don't know, increase the fees. Sometimes to spend a bit more money in the production. It's not making it's not a big economy, like, but it makes us able to make fun about that because it's getting better and better.
And I think it's not marketing which give more and more possibility to get a better printer or whatever. It's just the magazine is doing its own work. I think, like maybe someone read one issue and then
it's a sort of spreading.
Yeah.
Spreading
it's
network.
by the year, it's growing. Like
yeah. Maybe that's a very good way to.
How many subscribers do you have?
From the beginning, we can't count, but each year about 500.
500 every year or 500 stable?
Everywhere, every year.
Every season.
Every season.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. You were talking about growing, and I think that's a very beautiful metaphor for what we are all, you and we are all doing, that you're feeding into other people's knowledge, that you're doing what you want to do, that you try to be honest in what you're doing, and there's a lot that can bind this together. I was also thinking last time we had Nienke Terpsma, and she was talking about patchwork methods, so that what you earn in one thing doesn't necessarily mean in your publishing that you use that to do something else. I think you and I, that we all do that type of work. But anyhow, we need to finish, otherwise they're going to close us in this room. I think it's difficult to make a summary, so this is, I think, what all binds us, the relationships, the passion for what you're doing, although I hate the word passion, but it's obvious that you very much do what you want to do and that you look for your own niche or your own subjects that you work with. Thank you very much. So I would like to thank some people. First of all, Sara de Bondt, François Havigeer, Sasha Leopold, and Nina Paim, and of course my co-moderator Simone Trum. Maybe you can give them an applause. They should be mentioned again. That's Pakhuis de Zwijger. We have been in contact with Michelle Bergwijn, and also with Bart. But Michelle has been our beacon in the big rolling sea in how we could organize this. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Bart. Talisa and Tess have left, I think, but they're probably at the book desk where you can look at all the books and can buy them. But thank you to them.
And do it fast, because it's closing soon.
Yeah. Elsa Baptiste helped Simona and Team Thursday to look at the visuals and how we could use them, because some of them was a little bit of a mess. Don't feel.
Don't say it's the two in the middle. Leave that open.
Any joke?
Bruni Hofman, who is the indispensable coordinator of the Wim Kraull Institute. Without Bruni, we couldn't do these events, and we couldn't be alive as an institute. So thank you, Bruni. Of course, my colleague or our colleague members of the Wim Kraull Institute, well, they're not all here, so I'm not going to mention all the names, but the ones that are here, I thank them very much. And of course, the ones that are not here, I also thank them. This evening is also supported by some funding. One of them is Stichting Pictorite. The other one is NADD. NADD is Netwerk Archieven van Design en Digitale Cultuur, or Network of Archives of Design and Digital Cultures. They help us in doing this type of event. They have a little bit of money for that. In general, the Wim Kraull Institute is supported by, I know that you want to go for a drink, but this needs to be said. Allard Pierson, it's the institute in the center of the city where we can use spaces where they have lots that we can use in Natura. And we have a really good cooperation with them, because they also have a great archive with graphic design, posters, circus material, you don't know what, and it's all there. Amsterdam Universiteitsfonds, Algemeen Sociaal Fonds, Fotografie Media, Pictorite I already mentioned, NADD I already mentioned. BNO is not a sort of, it's a sort of in-kind sponsoring how we work together. Stedelijk Museum Amsterdam, that's also not money, but working together in kind. And again, Pakhuis de Zwijger, thank you. And when you have questions for these wonderful speakers, there's a bar downstairs, there's beer, wine, go for it.